Mashallah, let's see how many of us are here. Yep, there's two of them here at the minute, and hopefully a third sister should be joining us soon. So, assalamu alaikum to Shabina and Syra, and here appears Rani as well. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you all?
Alhamdulillah. Enjoying the heat.
So are you enjoying it?
Not really.
Yep, some of us are. And some of us aren't enjoying it as much. Yeah, subhanAllah. Well, it's a full house today. Jazakallah khair to all three of you. Sister Syra is back again today as well. Jazakallah khair, Sister Syra. Nice to have you back again. Rani, you're joining after a while, so nice to have you here. And Shabina, nice to have you, as always.
Nice to be back.
No, alhamdulillah. So let's see what justice we can do to this topic today. It's quite extensive again, quite big. There's so many different angles and perspectives we can take this topic from. We'll try and collaborate it or bring it together with the concept of Dhul Hijjah as well at the end, and how we should take it from an Islamic perspective. But before that, we'll see how we can dissect the concept and where we can go with it. So the topic for today's show is parenting I can't cope anymore. And before we delve into that and where the idea came from, I just want to remind the listeners out there, feel free to contribute in today's show. You can leave us feedback, comments, questions, either on Facebook, or you can call in, or you can text in on 07779481822. You can WhatsApp in on that number as well. Or you can call the Inspire line on 01582481822. So do feel free to contribute towards the show, and do feel free to also contribute towards any suggestions for any further topics for any future shows as well, inshallah, that we can do. The show is a parenting show, and it's for parents, the guardians out there listening. And if you think over the years there's been any gaps that we've left in the topic of parenting, then feel free to suggest that and make that suggestion to ourselves, inshallah. Okay, so moving on to the topic, parenting I can't cope anymore. I have to say that I was sadly inspired by this show or this topic for today's show from a couple of newspaper articles that I came across. One was an article that was published in a local newspaper, I think up in Manchester, up north, back in May. And it was in regards to, literally the heading was along the lines of I can't cope anymore, and the mother simply saying that she can't cope with her having her children anymore, and she'd rather they go into care, and that would be a better place for them. And another article that I came across over the weekend that has just recently hit the news in America, about a father that shot 3 of his young sons in an execution kind of a manner, aged 3, 4, and 7. Both categories of children very young. The first category from the UK, the children were very young as well. So this idea of not being able to cope or manage, it's exasperated to an extent at which it's not just a matter of stress or anxiety for some people. It's another level. I was also speaking to a friend from Sheffield over the weekend who's been invigilating at schools during the GCSE period, and she was shocked at the amount of children that were coming in for GCSEs and the neglect that they've received through the lack of care or attention to even consider their study time or their study plan by their parents, or to even check in on how they are feeling or how they are or how they're coping or managing with their exams, or to consider that their timetables or clean clothes or even bathed, or 16-year-olds, yes, they can bathe themselves, but that consideration of care from a parent perspective, or having the fact that there'll be no food in the house, it was just shocking for me. And this she was relaying from, she was saying to me, Naveed, even Muslim families, I'm not just talking about non-Muslim families or the wider community. My 2 articles here some parents listening out there might say, oh, well, that's not the Muslim community. In Islam, we have very strong, stringent rules about how we should be with our children. But this lady, this friend of mine, she was saying you'd be surprised, and this whole conversation began because I was saying, God, subhanallah, when we were at school, it's my first doing his GCSE, so for me it's quite interesting because when we were doing GCSEs, there wasn't much consideration about anxiety or stress or calming your nerves and giving you hot tips before you go into an exam and even providing food. So when my son was telling me that, oh, Mom, there's so much food there and drink that we can just have, before we go into an exam if anybody's hungry, I just thought, that's a bit extra. But of course, it's not extra because after speaking to this friend of mine, I realized that there's a lot of neglect happening because those basic needs aren't being met or fulfilled. And both of these newspaper articles were sort of indicating that parents can't cope. And the parents saying, I can't do it anymore. Take them into care and take them away from me. Or it's the 4-year-old's fault. It's the 7-year-old's fault. And so that's what inspired me with this topic. And alhamdulillah, I've got 2 teachers on with me today, or nearly teachers, inshallah, working in the school environment, dealing with secondary schools, and maybe what I've just mentioned about the reality of 16-year-olds might be something that you come across as well. And Rani, yourself, Jazakallah khair for joining me today. You've got adult children, young adults and adult. And so I'm hoping that through the spectrum, we can, inshallah, give some fundamental take-home message. Right, I've spoken quite a bit. What were your thoughts when I suggested the topic? Whoever wants to go first, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. When you came across you sent the topic across, I wasn't shocked in the sense of the articles or anything because we know this goes on. Yeah, there is a lot of neglect going on in the communities, or it doesn't matter which community we're living in. It's as a general society, especially when it comes to children. Sometimes it's not the fault of the parents. Maybe they're not in they're in a deprived, say, situation, poverty, whatever. There's so many circumstances behind the situation they're in. But what you just mentioned in those articles, that is just an extreme level. And there are so many horror stories like that out there. And even in the Muslim community, like you said, I have, I know somebody who's a social worker, and the stories of Muslim households where this neglect is happening, whether it's on, the clothing level or whether the children are being left home alone, and the parents have gone on a holiday and left the children on their own, or they left them with neighbours, or they left them with their grandparents and gone on a holiday because they want that me time, or they want that holiday time because that was their, the way that their life was before they got married and before they had the children. So the children have now got in their way. So yeah, these horror stories are out there, and sadly, we do see them in the Muslim community, and I feel maybe it's to do with the lack of understanding of responsibility what a child carries, and the lack of accountability as well. It is shocking and it's upsetting, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Syro, Shabina, what are your thoughts? Go ahead.
Yes, assalamu alaikum. So I would just want to start off with saying that, the 21st century that we're in, parenting is really difficult in a sense where, we've got different challenges to previous generations. So, it's not an easy task. And, we sometimes feel overwhelmed. So me as being a parent myself, and, I'm in the teaching profession, so I have to deal with, children all the time. So, when you did send me the topic, it wasn't really, hard hitting, because there is for example, there is neglect, but I see a lot of emotional neglect. That's the one thing that, there's a lot of that. Neglect as in physical, there is physical, we do get cases, but I think there's a lot of social and emotional, where, parents are not able to connect with children. The understanding is not there. And I think what children feel is that, they are not getting that emotional support. So maybe they're talking to other, they're getting advice from other people that are not really useful. So I think there's a lot of that where children are not able to connect with anyone. And then they, there's a lot of causes for that. I've got a lot to say on this topic. Going on to slowly. I think,
go ahead, sorry.
With parents as well, there's two we can say, like, there's two parts to this. There's challenging parents, and then there's parents that are, we can't really, say that it is their fault, because maybe they've been raised up by, themselves like that. And, there's maybe they haven't got the support, they don't understand how to raise kids, maybe that's how they were raised themselves. So it's hard.
Okay. Shabina, what are your thoughts and views?
I mean, obviously that you hear loads of horror stories. I know my sister does fostering, so I know I come across loads of cases where there is so much neglect in the Muslim community. And I think it comes from a number of reasons. Often I hear when relationships break down. Relationships break down, then the parents, their focus is on the relationship and not necessarily the children, and therefore the children get neglected. Or, for example, the parents are busy socializing, the parents are busy, say, keeping up with the Joneses, that they've forgotten to raise their children. So there are many cases of why these things happen, or how or what has happened, why these children are neglected. I know there's one sister who has 6 children, and she struggles with her children a lot, because she's raised them in a manner that whereby she hasn't put in any discipline at all, and therefore all the household responsibility has fallen onto her. So that is a lot to deal with. When we don't put in those sort of disciplines with our children, parenting is going to be very hard. It's going to be very hard to raise our children. When we don't think about, okay, what do I want? How do I want my child to be? How can I get there? How can I get advice in raising the children? What can I do if my toddler is giving tantrums? What can I do to deal with these things? But if we don't seek these sort of knowledge, this sort of information, we are going to struggle. And if we don't prioritize our children, we are going to neglect them.
Yeah. I think hearing all of you there for a moment there, I think there's 2 aspects you see that I saw this from looking in on this topic. And the first aspect was the fundamental, crucial conceptual issue and problem when people do not understand the concept of parenting and what parenting is. And there is a craze at the minute about having babies hanging off your arms like, handbags, and putting them in what I call beautiful, super branded clothing and items and all of this kind of stuff. And people can see that. And naturally, even the maternal instinct can kick into people, and people can get broody and think, oh, I want another baby. I'd love to have a baby again and just have a baby. But these little babies, they need day in, day out care, and not just for a day or a moment or a year or a couple of years, or until they can go to the toilet by themselves, or until they can go to school by themselves, but it's a lifetime. And parenting is a lifetime commitment until the day that we die. So my father, Allah give him health, who's 85 years old, there isn't a single day that he's not consciously parenting, although his kids aren't there with him, or worrying or concerned or giving advice or saying not to worry about this or not to worry about that, because it's a conscious effort. And that conceptual understanding of fundamentally thinking about, why am I a parent? What is parenting about? Why do I want a child? Why am I pregnant? Why do I want to become a father? Is crucial. And then the element of making that idea a practice, it hits you hard anyway, just like any reality does. It's reading about marriage before you marry, and then the reality of marriage kicks in, where it's not as easy as, oh, he does his bit and she does his bit, and then they just walk off into the sunset and it's bliss. There's challenges, there's difficulties, there's personality clashes, there's issues in the grays of life, and so on and so forth. So all of these things are very important to take into consideration, and to think about, why am I parenting in the first place? Why have I decided to have a child? And sometimes we have surprises, and I talk about this all the time. Surprises, I call them gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you get pregnant, when you have a child that you didn't plan to have, you thought, okay, I'm done, I can't even cope with the children I have, and then another child comes along, and for some people then another comes along, or even another comes along. Like I've said in previous shows, I know a sister who's had 3 surprises, and she's a mother of 5. And for those parents, this is a lifelong commitment, but then there's an understanding behind the commitment towards parenting, and that is fundamental. And that needs to be there. It's not something that we're doing because everybody else is doing it. It's not something we're doing because I just feel like doing this. And then we want to throw the towel in when it gets too difficult, too challenging, and it requires a whole commitment. So there's the fundamental aspect of parenting, and fundamental failures, such as the article from the UK. One of the points that was made was that there was fundamental failures on behalf of the parents towards these children. It wasn't just a failure of understanding, and as you have pointed out, some of you today, that you do need advice, you do need help, you do need to seek out and speak to people and gain this understanding as you're on the job, as you're actually doing the job, and you're moving from one stage to the other. And it's not even about your first or your second or your 8th child, it's about each child, and character and personality will be different. And there will be challenges that you're facing, and you will need advice. And that's understanding your commitment, your intention, your accountability to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the first instance of parenting. The other aspect, and you guys have touched on it, I've labeled it into a separate section, the parental burnout, I've called it, which we can all get. We can all think from time to time, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. Oh my God, I can't wait till this GCSE period is over. Oh my God, I can't wait till, they've gone to can go to the toilet by themselves, or they can ask for food by themselves, whatever it may be. There's many different aspects of things that we go through, and at times when we just feel exhausted or burnt out. And that burnout, as I think Syra, you mentioned there, it can be emotional, physical, or social. But then there's a difference between being burnt out as a parent temporarily, which can become major if not dealt with, and the crucial level of neglect in emotional, physical, or social manner of parenting, because you feel that you can't cope anymore. And that has to be understood, the variation of both these aspects, inshallah, and that's crucial and fundamental. Sorry, Rani, was it you that wanted to say something there?
Yeah, I was going to just say that, you mentioned a challenge, and parenting is one of the greatest challenges that we ever have to face. So whether it's a mother or a father, and that's one of the things that we are, say, least prepared for. Because we know that you get married and you have children, but like you said, a surprise might come along, and although we might be physically ready, we're young and healthy and stuff, we might not be mentally ready. And bringing up a child is, like you said, is from birth through adulthood, and it never stops.
Yeah.
It never stops. When they're a child, obviously they've got different set of requirements. Yeah. When they're adult or a teenager, there's a different set of requirements. But all those times, whether it's 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years, whatever it is, lifetime you have, parents are constantly thinking about their children, how they can help them. And no one is born to be a mother, for example, straight away, or a father straight away. And when you are faced with this challenge, I think as Sarah mentioned it, resources and help and support available. Some of these parents that can't cope, or say, they're saying, "Oh, we've had enough." Maybe they haven't got that support network for them to help them to have a bit of a break. Because yes, you do need a break. It can be challenging. You've got a crying baby 24/7, for example, they've got colic or whatever, and you need some rest, you need some sleep as well, but you need that support. So say your husband, or I don't know, your mum or your dad or a brother or a sister, someone can come and help give a respite. Is it a respite? Yeah. Or an hour or so. That gives you that energy again. And then it can lead to other things. And, the cases we're talking about, there's that extreme neglect, which over time it's sort of like built up. But like you said, we need that support network. But then if you look at the support network, there's so many things, so many people you can talk to, and one person will say something else and the other person will say something else, and it does get confusing on how to really look after your children. Because only you know your child and your situation. But yet I think I don't want to be what's that word? I think the support network needs to be there. So whether it's family or friends or neighbours, and so what if you have to say to your neighbour, "Oh, can you mind my child for an hour," for example, or your brother or your sister, or the grandma, you give me a bit of respite, and that should help, take that stress away from people.
I think when we talk about the fundamentals of parenting and the intention behind it and the viewpoint with which we come into parenting, I think that element, before we move on to the burnt out parent and, you needing respite and you needing somebody to just support you in that element, that aspect is connected to values and viewpoint. And that's really, really fundamentally crucial, because your values and your viewpoint about life and how you live life and how you view life is going to determine the attitude with which we come into parenting. The challenges are going to be a separate concept and a separate issue within itself. So the fact that I choose to have children, or I have a child, right from birth, the child has the right inside the mother's stomach to be fed well and treated well, the care, the consideration of what you're eating, what you're drinking. And that accountability begins right from there. As soon as the child is born, the child has the right to be named a good name, and a good honorable name in Islam. So that's the first right of the child after birth, and the rights just continue there onwards. Who sets this premise? Is it me, yourself? There's mashallah 4 of us here today, and we can have totally different views and opinions about the viewpoint or the fundamentals of parenting. But if we bring that back to the base of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that remains. Now, within that, we've got movement. Whether I breastfeed or whether I bottle feed, whether I toilet train my child straight from the nappy to the toilet seat, or whether I do the toilet training via a potty. There's so many different ways, whether I take the bottle away at a particular age to another age. Whichever aspect or way that I do this is entirely up to me. However, the aspect of the fact that I've got one reference point and there's a common reference point, and the people that I'm seeking advice from share this common viewpoint with me, which is accountability to Allah, reference to Allah, and the fact that this child is my sadqa jariyah, my Jannah or my Jahannam. How they turn out and what your future challenges are going to be as they grow up is a totally different issue to the first instance of the decision that we make of parenting and taking on the life of a parent within our lifetime. Believe it or not, we're going into a break, ladies. Subhanallah. There's so much more to talk about on this topic. Gather your thoughts and keep them in your mind. Straight after the break, I'll come back out to you and you can contribute with your thoughts and viewpoints on what I just said. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Muhammad Shahzadur Rahman. Continue listening on Inspire 105.1 FM.
Ready to be part of something extraordinary? Inspire Eid is coming back on June 28th and 29th, and we need volunteers like you. Want to boost your CV while making a positive impact? Join us and enhance your professional profile with valuable skills like event coordination, community engagement, and teamwork. As a volunteer, you'll gain hands-on experience and build a diverse network, from helping with event setup to engaging with attendees. Your unique skills will shine. Sign up today on inspireeid.org or call us on 01582 481810.
A large and elegant wedding and events venue in the heart of Luton, catering for up to 1,200 guests, with a 5-star food hygiene rating, plenty of parking, bridal suite, family rooms and prayer facilities. Crescent Hall's the perfect venue for your wedding, events, parties and conferences. We have some great offers for summer. Contact us to find out more. Call 01582 723386. Email bookings@crescenthall.co.uk or search for us online and social media. Crescent Hall, Luton. Conditions apply.
अगर आप अकाउंट्स या टैक्स की वजह से परेशान हैं तो घबराने की कोई बात नहीं। आज ही मुकम्मल राजदारी से हमारे साथ अपने तमाम मसाइल, बुक कीपिंग, पेरोल, वीएटी, टैक्सी अकाउंट्स, लिमिटेड कंपनी बनाना वगैरह के लिए राब्ता कायम कीजिए। हमारे मशवरे और खिदमत से आपको खुशी और तसल्ली महसूस होगी। याद रखें, अब्दुल कयूम ऑफ ए कयूम अकाउंटेंट्स लिमिटेड, 4A Waldeck Road, Luton. Telephone 01582 755252. Mobile 07961 188616. Email aq.accountants@hotmail.co.uk.
There is a curse for every disease. A medical remedy best suited for that disease cures one at God's command.
वेस्टबोर्न फार्मेसी हफ्ते के 7 दिन सुबह 9 बजे से लेकर रात 9 बजे तक खुली रहती है। हमारी सर्विसेज में शामिल हैं ट्रैवल वैक्सीनेशंस, स्टॉप स्मोकिंग, डायबिटीज चेक, बच्चों की ग़िज़ा और बहुत कुछ। लुटन और टनस्टेबल में फ्री प्रिस्क्रिप्शन, पिकअप और डिलीवरी सर्विसेज भी की जाती है। इसके अलावा आप मेडिसिन के इस्तेमाल के लिए फ्री मशवरा भी ले सकते हैं। वेस्टबोर्न फार्मेसी, 198 B Dunstable Road, Luton, corner of Westbourne Road. Telephone 01582 419 432.
Chai and Chapati, the restaurant cafe in Berry Park, is not like other chai brands. Chai and Chapati offers breakfast, brunch and dinner, serving tea and fresh snacks, along with a great choice of fresh curries, omelettes and fresh chapatis, English breakfasts, masala fish, smash burgers and tender chicken burgers. Mocktails too. Drop in to try Chai and Chapati's tasty new Desi Chai and find them on Instagram and Facebook. Great news, there's a new branch opening in Kingsbury, North London soon.
With famine, natural disasters, and wars destroying the Ummah, join Families Relief and help provide essential food, water, and medical aid to the most needy people around the world. Your donation will help save lives in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Don't delay. Pick up the phone and call us on 0114 365 4454 or visit familiesrelief.org.uk. Help us keep families together.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 7:30.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the second half of the parenting show live today on Inspire 105.1 FM. Your host today is myself, Sister Naveed, and joining me for today's show are sisters Shabina, Saira and Rani. The topic for today's show is parenting. I can't cope anymore. And out there for the listeners, feel free to contribute to today's show via the text line or the WhatsApp line on 07779 481822. You can call in on 01582481822 and be connected to make comments or leave any comments of suggestions or feedback that you have. The show should be live on Facebook as well, on the Inspire FM page, so feel free to catch up in your own time to leave any feedback on Facebook and to share the show via the Facebook app as well. Coming back to yourselves, I was just finishing off a point about values and viewpoint, and I suppose the other aspect would be acceptance of the reality that we're in terms of parenting. If the children that we gain, which wouldn't be for, well, even with guardianship, you could have a sibling that's passed away and you've taken in their children and you didn't expect to receive these children or for that atrocity to happen. So acceptance of a reality and the connection to the akhirah, the connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the role that we've taken on, just like with every other role that we have in our lives. But anybody have any thoughts or views on what we were talking about just before the break?
Yeah, I just wanted to add what you were saying about having that connection. It reminded me of, I was having a conversation with a colleague, and now she's not Muslim, and she was telling me how she wants children, but her husband doesn't want children because they're a nuisance. And it made me think about, okay, they don't want children because they're a nuisance, and we can think like that because they are hard. But when we're given, as a Muslim, when we're entrusted with having children, when we're given that gift, because having children is a gift from Allah, we're entrusted with that. They are an amana to us. And if we have that viewpoint, then our struggles of raising them, we can make that connection. And that struggle will become, so to say, easier. They're not a nuisance to us because we've made that connection with Allah that we're given these children. They're not a nuisance to us. We've been entrusted with them, and we need to do everything in a manner to please Allah by raising these children now. Whether we're given 1, 2, 3, however many. I think that's the point that I just want you to make. It's really important for us to go back.
And that's a really important point, because I think as they get older, and well, especially when they're going through puberty and as they become young adults and go into adult life, that period of time, they're probably the biggest nuisance, if you want to use that word, than ever before. Each child is different. Each child can be challenging in different ways. Some you're trying to build their confidence. Others you're trying to keep them away from a bad crowd or bad environment or bad influences. And everybody's struggle with parenting is very, very different. And it is a very exhausting job. It can be very, very isolating. It does take up a lifetime. It does require commitment. You can make that fun, like you said, if you have a particular viewpoint, or it can become very depressing, very exhausting, and very much full of despair for you if you haven't taken on the viewpoint that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages us to take on. Saira, what are your thoughts or views?
So I just wanted to share, with every stage, personally with me as well, when I had my first one, I thought, when he starts, sleeping properly at nighttime, it'll be easier. And then, I think it's very common, isn't it? You think as they're getting older, it'll be easier. As the time passes, as they, they'll start to walk, and then, they'll start going to school, it'll be easier. And I think, that's one part, that's what my personal experience, it doesn't get easier. It maybe physically it might get easier. They sleep at night, they eat themselves. But, the other aspect, like emotionally, and, when they challenge you, when they actually talk back to you and, they ask you questions, I think that's the most challenging part of my parenting, that I would say, like, because my little one's 4 now. So I've had my older one's 12. So, that gap, I think, when they come to that stage, it's me personally, I think, as they getting older, they get so challenging. You have to understand every stage of their life.
And the secondary school aspect of parenting those children, when they're going through the change, they've got puberty happening, they've got influences surrounding them. There's good, there's bad, and the peer pressure is there, and and they're torn between values as well. Islamic values are very different. Your household values might be Islamic, might not be so Islamic, and then societal values come with their own set of problems. And then there's a clash, because sometimes for parents the struggle is the acceptance of my life isn't how it used to be, and as Shabina was saying, the word nuisance, or because they take up your time, they take up your money, they take up your living space. So all of these aspects are so important to understand that at each stage the parenting is just going to change and maybe become even more difficult. And some parents out there that might be listening, their kids could be, na'udzubillah, Allah protect them, in knife crime or in addiction of drugs, or there's so many problems out there with the youth that we're facing. Recently, I heard about a case in the community, of a young girl who got pregnant at school, and so this is ongoing. This is quite normal. This is what happens. When I say normal, the challenges of parenting. And at that moment in time, as a parent, we need to take a step back and review and reflect. Naturally, we have to take ourselves to account before we take our children to account.
I think that
identity. Naturally, and naturally, we have to also know the challenges that we're facing against, and the reality aspect of, maybe like what Rani was saying in the first half of the show about the support network. The support network isn't just about babysitting. For some parents, it's about advice. It's about going and seeking understanding about a challenging circumstance that they're going through with their 19-year-old or 25-year-old, and therefore each aspect is important, and it's fine. It's okay as long as we know we've done our bit for the sake of Allah, and we've tried to the best of our ability, and that ability aspect is important to bring in there as well. Sorry, Syra, go ahead.
No, definitely, I agree with you. I think with one of I'm just going to share. That friend of mine was sharing with me. So she's got a daughter where, they've moved from another country. So now what's happened is, they didn't think that this would happen, but as the daughter's gone into school, it's quite different here as compared to other countries. So they'll meet opposite gender, and they get into all sorts of I don't know what to say,
situations, circumstances,
and then I think that's really hard for them to cope. Like, why is this happening? Because they haven't really been exposed to these kind of situations. So there's a lot of challenges that are going in the community where parents have not been exposed to those kind of situations. It's really new to them, because they've come from a new country and they've never been exposed to this kind of situation. Sure. And then they say, they might blame the school, or they might blame the UK or the system. So I think these kind of situation challenges are there.
They are, and it's about educating yourself. And I think there's different ways of ridding ignorance if we take that responsibility on. You don't need to have a bachelor in parenting to be able to go and speak to people around you, the community and the neighbors. If you want to take the onus and the responsibility of finding out the system, finding out the differences, finding out how can I raise my child with the Islamic values even better, or what are the struggles that I'm going to have in my parenting, and what are the issues that I'm going to be dealing with. Ronnie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with all of you that it is very, very difficult. Doesn't matter where you are and how, young or old your child is, especially nowadays, the teenagers, it's even more difficult. And as Muslims, we know that we have a responsibility towards our children, and that we will be accountable on the day of judgment, for these responsibilities, as Shabina said and Sarah said, our children are our amana, So it's a responsibility as well as a gift and a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's how we should see it, that these children are blessings, they are a gift, but they are a
hard work.
a test. They're hard work. Yeah, children are a test and a trial. We'll go through them. You mentioned Hajj before, that Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was put through a test through his child, through his son, wasn't he?
Yes.
And it was through his patience and his perseverance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewarded him. So if we have that viewpoint that whatever we do for our children, we fulfill their rights, we'll give them whatever they need, whether it's food, clothing, shelter, education, and it's not just dunyawi education, it's deen education as well. We need to teach our children about Islam. So if there are temptations out there, then they will stay away from them because they've learnt about Islam that these are boundaries. We need boundaries, don't we? There's a limits, and this is a limit of our we can't do certain things, we can't do this and can't do that. If you don't teach that to our children, then we have not fulfilled our responsibility, then we won't be getting the reward ultimately. Why do we do all of this? We do it for seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for gaining paradise, and we want that for our children as well. So for us and our children to get to the hereafter, we need to teach them about Islam. We need to fulfill their responsibilities. And eventually, they will look after us as well when we're at old age, and they will fulfill their responsibilities, and together we can, get to Jannah, inshallah.
Inshallah. And you've naturally taken us to the last and maybe the final segment of the show today on the fact that we are in Dhul Hijjah. And alhamdulillah, these first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah are known as the most blessed days in Islam. And the last, in comparison to the last 10 nights of Ramadan, when we seek for Laylatul Qadr, that are the most blessed in these first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, have so much blessing within them. In a Bukhari hadith, Muhammad said there are no days on which righteous deeds are more beloved to Allah than these first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. And when we look to the aspect of Dhul Hijjah and the first 10 days, as you just mentioned there, Rani, they are associated with the idea of struggle, sacrifice, forbearance. And these first 10 days are all about seeking forgiveness. And it might be that our challenging youth and children that we are the parents or guardians of do make mistakes. They make irreversible mistakes. And now they want repentance and forgiveness, not just from us, but from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these are the days in which we seek for forgiveness. And maybe we need guidance as parents, and we do feel burnt out, and we do feel like I can't cope anymore. And I don't know how to influence my child better. I don't know where I've gone wrong or whatever it may be. And these are the days in which we make dua and we seek the guidance and we seek the protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the evils of society and the bad and the influences that are misguided and misguiding. So we seek protection from harm, and we seek the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we create the atmosphere of understanding. So Eid's coming, and for the youth, Eid can just be about having the car, having the outfit, having the pair of shoes, getting your mehndi on for girls, getting the outfit for the girls, and even with the girls, it's all about the cars, and so on and so forth nowadays. There's a total disconnection or a lack of an education or understanding about why we are celebrating Eid in the first place, Eid al-Adha. It's celebrated to celebrate the sacrifice and the struggle and the forbearance and the patience and the perseverance that Ibrahim alayhi salam and Hajra, Allah be pleased with her, had as parents, and in their time, and what they had to go through, and to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's today being celebrated in this manner in the ritual of Hajj and the ritual of Eid at the end of it. And these are not just concepts that are going to fall in the mind of our child or fall into our mind or our household. We have to go out and seek this and make these connectives, and then bring these connectives back onto the table with our children or our families or our household. And within that, we understand that, there can be people that find it difficult to cope and have lower coping skills, or a lower level of frustration or tolerance, lower level of resilience. That's all fine, as long as we want to change this. Because if the first 10 days of the Hijjah are about increasing in forbearance and perseverance and sacrifice and struggle, then that means that it connects it right back to the beginning, which is about, why am I parenting in the first place? Yes, at times we can feel like this is too much for me. And even the prophets showed us, resembled aspects of where they felt the struggle. They really did feel the struggle, but they carried on. They soldiered on through that reality and circumstances in every aspect of their life. And that connection, I think, is really important to take home, especially in these 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. And if we're struggling, make dua, chat to people, speak to people, think about the people that you trust that you can go to. And if that fails, there's so many mediums out there that offer Islamic coaching facilities on parenting and seeking advice from sources that are readily available. And eventually, I believe, and I'm going to come back to you guys very quickly in a minute, understanding that, of course, parenting is one element of an Islamic society. So there's many elements of that missing. So if we're living in a times where there's missing elements of Islam within our society and within our life, that means that we're going to try and fill those gaps and voids as best as we can. But the challenges and struggles are going to be there. And I think these days of Dhul Hijjah really signify that this is the purpose of life. And that's what we're celebrating here, that those that struggle and go through these challenges and come out successful with the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they get the reward with Allah. And that's what Ibrahim alayhi salam and his family represent here. And that's what we're celebrating. And that's what we need to also celebrate within ourselves. Every time we feel burnt out, or we can't cope, or we've committed haram towards our children, in whatever way that it may be bad, and we know we need to reflect, contemplate, correct, and make a change. There are parents out there that are neglectful to their children, even in the Muslim community, or non-Muslims around you, giving advice and stepping up and actually dealing with these challenges is crucial and important. Saira, I'm going to come to you for anything that you want to add onto that, inshallah, or any thoughts that you have.
So can I come back after the ladies have spoken?
Yeah, that's fine. Shabina, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like that connection that you made. You know, when I said earlier that, having children, that comment that my colleague had made, having children is a nuisance. And the way we should view it is, as a parent, having children is a sacrifice, is a sacrifice in itself. There is a lot of things that you will be sacrificing by having children, the time and effort that you put into it. There is a sacrifice, but there is a lot of reward in this. Allah, has said in many ayahs that there's a lot of reward attached to raising, pious children and raising these children.
Yeah, absolutely. Rani, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Shabina and you. That it is a sacrifice. Parenting is physically and emotionally demanding, but ultimately the reward that we get for our patience, our perseverance, and our sacrifice. Like you say, you do sacrifice your time. Sometimes it's your wish, your desire for a career, for example, and you've sacrificed that to be with your children at home. Yeah. Or you sacrifice time and effort. But at the end of the day, as Muslims, we know we will be rewarded for that. Subhanallah, you know. And these tests come, you know, we're just human beings. Even the prophets were tested. We're talking about Ibrahim alayhi salam. He was tested, wasn't he? Ismail alayhi salam was, you know, his first child after so many years. And he was asked to sacrifice him. And what did he do? He obeyed. And if we, and so his reference point was Allah. Yeah. So our reference point is Islam. So if we do have these challenges and these problems, and everybody has them, everybody will have a burnout moment. You know, even if you're one of the strongest people, there will be a time where you will have burnout. But if your reference point is Islam, you know what you do, what you are seeking, that reward, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for you. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't burden you more than, you know, you can bear. You know, then and if you look to our values and look to our role model, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's shown us, he's told us how to raise our children. You know, there's that beautiful hadith about kissing the child, kissing your children. And let me just here it is. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he instructs us to show our love to our children. He is not one of us who does not have mercy for children and respect for our seniors. That's At-Tirmidhi. It is reported that Al-Aqra ibn Habis saw Allah's messenger kissing his grandchild and said to the Prophet, I have 10 children, but I have never kissed any one of them. The Prophet said, he who does not show mercy towards his children, no mercy will be shown to him. That's Al-Bukhari. You know, beautiful advice. That's all we need to go to. We need to go to the Quran. We need to go to the Sunnah. And inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for us.
Inshallah.
You know.
On that note, there's a Tirmidhi hadith in which it's reported that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said the pleasure of the Lord is in the pleasure of the Father, and the wrath of the Lord is in the wrath of the Father. And I think these hadiths that, you know, like the one that you've just mentioned, or this, it really shows that regardless of whatever the trial, the tribulation is taking place in every single household, the first point of call is to reflect and think, what role have I played in creating this? Secondly, how can I correct this? And thirdly, there has to be warmth in the way that we deal with it. Deal with the incident, the haram, the circumstance, the makruh, whatever it is that's been taking place, that your child has got themselves into a situation, but at the same time, there needs to be the balancing effect of warmth that comes into that level of parenting, and the coping strategy in relation to it. You know, there's many elements that are mentioned in Islam, and one of the things in a hadith in which Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, it's an Ibn Majah and Tirmidhi hadith, the greatest reward comes with the greatest trial. When Allah loves the people, he tests them. And this is really important, whether it's as a community, a society, and when Islam existed as an entity, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested the people, the ummah at large at that time. And we find ourselves today in the situation we're in, the chaos we're in as an ummah, or whether we see it within households. So whenever Allah loves the people, he does test them with the greatest trial. And the hadith carries on. So this is something that's really important for us to know and value and take on. And finally, also that pleasures for the believer are not just for the dunya, but rather they're for the akhirah. And the dunya is a place of test. Whether Nuh al-Islam had it with his child when he didn't want to get into the ark, whether Ibrahim al-Salam had it in his manner with his children, whether was it Yunus al-Islam, the father of Yusuf al-Salam, had it with his so many children, and them going off on the wrong path, or or the exhaustion. There are different reasons for why parents can't cope. However, that connection needs to be made back. Very quickly, Saira, we've just got a couple of minutes left. If there's anything that came to your mind or your thoughts.
No, I agree with all the what's been said. I just wanted to add, if we look back at the background of, why we celebrate, Eid and Eid al-Adha and everything, I think patience and you're going to get a reward. So when it comes to the bigger challenge, the bigger reward you're going to get. So you have to understand there has to be patience, and children will go through a lot of changes all their life. So we have to understand them as well, and not always say what we think. Sometimes we have to listen.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. The reading Quran with our children in these 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, understanding Quran, maybe fasting and understanding the concepts of fasting, seeking the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reaching out for dua in these 10 days to make the hardship of parenting easier for yourselves and to guide our future generations. Please keep us in your duas in these 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Please forgive us for any shortcomings or mistakes. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum salam.
Coming up next, English Talk Series. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
AK Windows South Limited, manufacturers and